about a new study finding that low protein diets actually are linked with increased risk of mortality from both cancer and cardiovascular specific diseases. Welcome back. We're going to break down a new study. Thank you as always for being here. You know, we hear in the media that high protein diets are linked with diabetes, cardiovascular disease, obesity, and all sorts of chronic health conditions. But we have a new epidemiological study. I'll break down what epidemiology means in just a moment. But this study found that in fact, low protein diets are linked with higher odds of dying prematurely from all causes, as well as cardiovascular specific causes, as well as cancer. The title of the study is Dietary Amino Acids Intake and All-Cause and Cause-Specific Mortality, Results from the Jolistan Cohort Study. This is an ongoing nutritional cohort where investigators had food frequency questionnaires and phone calls out to close to 80,000 subjects over a 8-year follow-up period. And what they found over the course of the duration of the study is that low protein diets and low amino acid diets were linked with higher risk of dying from all causes. Now, I want to share with you the details of this and really sort of talk about this. Now, as you know, I don't put a lot of weight into epidemiological studies because, you know, we have to look at the baseline characteristics of the study participants. You know, there's often this healthy user bias that goes into this and so forth. But I think this is just one of many interesting studies finding that, you know what, we don't see a universal benefit to low protein diets. It's highly conflicting. In fact, what this study and many other studies have found is that high protein diets, especially over the age of 65, is protective against risk of dying from all causes, cancer-specific and cardiovascular-specific causes. So just wanted to share with you some of these details. Let's dive into this epidemiological studies. Really appreciate you all being here. If you're enjoying the content, hit that like button. That just tells the algorithm that more people like you should be seeing this content. We're not really going to go too much into the weeds on the statistical analysis from this paper. But again, for those of you just now coming on, a new study finds that low amino acid and low protein diets are linked with higher risk of dying from all causes, as well as cancer and cardiovascular specific causes. Now, we're not really totally surprised by this, but I think your average person might be surprised because they have been told by the esteemed professors over at Stanford and Harvard University saying that protein is problematic. It rots your colon, it rots your kidneys, it's going to give you diabetes, cancer, and heart disease. But that's not what we're finding, at least in this particular study. So let's get into the details on this. As always, if you're enjoying the content, hit that like button. Let me know where you're from, and let's get into it. Okay. So as I mentioned, this is an epidemiological study. It is important to recognize that individuals, study participants that had the highest protein diets tended to smoke more, have higher body mass indices. So let me zoom in here so you guys can see this a little bit better. Okay, so hopefully you can see that right here. I highlighted some things as I read these studies. I like to highlight them for you and just dive into it. So the investigators say compared to individuals in the lowest quintile, those in the highest quintile of all categories of amino acid consumption were more likely to be male, have a higher body mass index, and more likely to drink alcohol as well as smoke cigarettes. So, you know, there we go. The problem with the nutritional epidemiological studies is that sometimes we're comparing unhealthy people to more unhealthy people. And so we can see these outcomes can be quite interesting. Okay, so going on down the list here. So what I wanted to do is look at these hazard ratios. Now, I know for some of you that aren't statisticians, you might be wondering, well, what is a hazard ratio? That's looking at how one outcome will influence the likelihood of a bad event occurring over time. And what you're seeing is grams per day of essential amino acids. And this is the hazard ratio of this. So you might notice, you know, the lowest risk of death over the course of the study was in individuals who consume a pretty moderate amount or a more higher amount of essential amino acids. Now, so this was a nonlinear model, suggesting that people on the ends of the bell curve, both low protein and exceedingly high protein, tended to have the higher risk of dying from all causes. And this is the 95% confidence intervals. And so I think this is quite interesting. And you see this across the board for both non-essential amino acids, essential amino acids, as well as cause-specific mortality. This is really interesting. So cardiovascular-specific mortality. Low protein diets were linked actually with higher rates of cardiovascular-specific mortality over time. And we also see that for mortality from other causes as well as cancer. So this to me is incredibly fascinating stuff. Let's go on down the list and look at some other things that I thought were quite interesting and intriguing to dive into. Okay, so there's a few highlighted sections here. We're just going to skip over this. We're going to skip over this one. Okay, so folks, really appreciate you all being here. Let's get into the discussion section. And again, I highlighted this just to make it really easy for you. Okay, in this large Iranian prospective cohort study, we found evidence for the association of dietary patterns of amino acids with mortality from all causes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and other causes. These findings tended to follow nonlinear associations. Lower amino acid intake within the first quintiles compared to the median quintile was either associated with increased mortality risk or had no additional benefit. One important finding of our study was the age interaction, the associations between dietary amino acids and mortality. While a high amino acid diet, irrespective of the amino acid group, was detrimental in middle-aged adults, the opposite effect was found in older adults, and increased hazard ratios of mortality were evident among those with low amino acid intake. Okay, so again, what does this mean? We're talking about this study here. Let's back up and pause. I know you like when I read stuff, but let's just make this really simple. As we introduce the baseline characteristics of the study participants, the middle-aged males who ate the most protein they weighed more, they were more overweight, they smoked and drank more, but they tended to have higher amino acid intakes. Now, that increased their risk of dying from all causes and cardiovascular specific causes, but in all individuals over the age of 65, high protein diets were linked with lower odds of dying from both cardiovascular specific mortality, cancer, and mortality from all causes. Translation: as you get older, protein is more important. It helps preserve lean muscle mass. It helps preserve strength, and that strength will keep you living independently and might even prevent you from having a fall. So that's interesting. I want to go on and read a little bit more about this because the investigators say inadequate protein intake in older adults contributes to frailty, sarcopenia, osteoporosis, and impaired immune responses. Turns out protein's good for your immune system. The responsiveness to the anabolic stimulus of amino acid intake decreases with increasing age. Several factors may cause decreased sensitivity of muscles in response to dietary protein intakes in older individuals, including impaired protein digestion and amino acid absorption, increased splenic amino acid retention and subsequent decreased circulatory amino acid levels, decreased physical activity. So the less you move your muscles, the less likely these amino acids will stimulate muscle protein synthesis, and impaired intracellular anabolic signaling. All right, so they go on down the list. Nevertheless, this decreased sensitivity in older persons can be overcome by higher amounts of amino acid consumption, including induction responses similar to those of younger adults by a larger dose of protein provides evidence for favorable effects of high protein intake in older ages. All right, so what's the main take home from this study? Surveying tens of thousands of individuals, tracking them for multiple years, finding that both low protein diets and extremely high protein diets are linked with increased risk of mortality. But in the middle, that's in individuals under the age of 65, moderate to moderate high protein diets are protective. Now, over the age of 65, high protein diets were linked with lower risk of dying from all causes. That's the main take home here. Now, it is an epidemiological study, which we know is fraught with challenges and limitation in terms of study design and sensitivity and all the things. But I think this is interesting. All the folks at Harvard that are doing these, using the NHANES data, finding that protein is linked with diabetes, and they say it's going to shorten your lifespan. It's going to give you colon cancer. It's going to clog your arteries. Well, we have a new study finding that that is actually not the case. Now, this is an epidemiological study. There are some limitations here and so forth. But I would love to know what your thoughts are. And then let's just open up to questions, guys. We don't have to sit here and rehash this study and dive into all the nuances and the details. I will share the reference right here because we have folks that are just now popping in. Again, if you're here and you're enjoying the content, hit that like button. Any questions right now are fair game. I want to make sure that we get to your live questions. I really enjoy connecting with you live and hearing your comments. I learn from you, hopefully in the same way that you learn from me. So, Geo says too much protein reduces lifespan. Yeah, I mean, it depends upon your age, it turns out. So if you're over the age of 65, protein is protective from a disease, premature mortality standpoint. And so we have actually pretty good data for that. Okay. Great question here. What are your thoughts on kale shakes with blueberries? You know what? I've grown kale. I have kale in my backyard. Kale is really tough. I good luck absorbing that. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of kale. I know kale is like this purported superfood, and many people love kale and kale smoothies and kale salads and kale this and they'll kale that. I think kale is hard to eat and hard to digest. That's just generally what I think. Okay. Jenny is but by the way, the follow-up for your question, Sopanarafan 11, blueberries and protein. I'm a huge fan of that all day long. So good point there. All right. Again, friends, where are you watching this from? If you're enjoying it, let me know in the comment section, the chat section. Thank you for being here. Jenny is 66 years old from New Zealand. She's an omnivore keeping protein medium to high. No meds. This is awesome. So again, over the age of 65, this study and multiple other studies find that protein should be a little bit higher as you get older. Marco says exercise, especially strength training plus high quality protein intake is successful. Yes. Agree with that, Marco. Love that. Thank you for that. Ultraviolet comment saying kale should be cooked or at least at the bare minimum massaged. Kale is tough stuff to digest. Yes. Jack says, you're reading too fast, all jumbled up, can't understand you. Is something wrong with my audio? I sure hope not. Let me know if my audio is okay. Was I reading too fast? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm trying to be respectful of your time when I make these videos because I know you're juggling things. You got kids, you got, going to the gym to exercise, and I try not to waste your time, but I can slow down, surely. Okay. Someone says, Doug says, greens are great. If you're like Paul Saladino and it just doesn't work for you, then sure. But to say they are bad for all people is dumb. Yeah, I agree. We shouldn't be condemning wholesale different categories of food. I do think that there are anti-nutrients in vegetables and grains that need to be accounted for. And people need to consider how they prepare some of these foods. For example, for a long time I was anti-grain, and then I started fermenting sourdough and using the mother culture to break down the anti-nutrients in organic wheat, and it seems to really work and improve the digestibility. So I think everything in moderation and context. BJ Penn 1989 says, been living off whole eggs and blueberries for the past 2 months and have never felt better. Amazing. Okay, some folks saying the audio is good, which is fantastic. Again, how's the content, guys? Hit that like button if you're here now and you're enjoying it. Really appreciate you all being here live. Thank you so much. If you're just now tuning in, we are reviewing an epidemiological study finding that low protein diets, especially in people over the age of 65, was linked with higher odds of mortality from all causes, cardiovascular specific causes, and cancer. So this is the thing. When Harvard and Stanford say, well, protein is bad, meat's going to rot your kidneys and your colon and give you colon cancer and it's going to whatever, the data is not that clear cut. We have conflicting evidence, and this paper found nonlinear associations, meaning moderate to moderate high intakes of essential amino acids and protein were more protective from prevention of premature mortality from a myriad of different causes. So I think that's important. Okay. Marco says oxalates can be an issue with many vegetables, especially if you have kidney issues. Yes. Excellent point. So there's anti-nutrients in plants that can be problematic, and so we need to be mindful of that. Doug says, is 1 gram of protein considered high? According to the recommended dietary allowance by our esteemed nutrition and health experts here at the USDA and parts of our health institutions. But I think 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass or ideal body weight is totally sufficient. So yeah, I have no problem with that. Okay. Michael says mTOR, mechanistic target of rapamycin. Yes, this is a pro-growth signal that is linked with protein intake, as well as exercise and insulin. We need periodic increases in mTOR. mTOR is neither bad nor good. It just is. It can be problematic in a state where people are hyper-inflammatory, insulin resistant, and overweight, and chronically snacking and things of the sort. But if you exercise, or if you lift weights, or you want to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, you need mTOR stimulation. So good point there. All right. Marco says, what are your thoughts on RFK's role in the upcoming government and his new war on the food industry? I'm all about it. We need to shake the tree a little bit here. We have a major problem in this country with autism, with obesity, with autoimmunity, with diabetes, with heart disease, with dementia and cancer. So we need a change. We absolutely need a change. And someone who doesn't have obvious conflicts of interest with big food and big pharma, helping to improve the health of Americans has my vote. So I agree. Do you consume kefir? I make my own yogurt. I have a buddy who is getting me into kefir, but I currently don't do that. Does it have to be pasteurized? No brands. I would just get some kefir grains and raw milk and ferment it yourself. That's what I would do. I make unpasteurized yogurt in the slow cooker. Really simple, easy to do. It tastes phenomenal. I would highly recommend getting that going. Okay. Shaking the Tree, favorite Peter Gabriel song. Yeah, we need to poke the bear. We need to shake the tree. That's what we're doing here, my friends. So that's good stuff. What do you think of these study breakdowns on the live sessions? Are they fun? Are they engaging? A question here, Cody, I do want to address your question on heavy metal detoxes in just a moment. But first, what I would like to do is share with you just something, since we're talking about metabolic health. You all know that this is one of my favorite natural products. It's called berberine. Very, very effective at helping to curb food cravings and to help support metabolic health, especially this time of year. When there's holiday parties coming up, we have Thanksgiving around the corner. Berberine is one of these natural products that has been used for 3,000 years. It's super, super effective. If you haven't yet tried it, there's over 330 reviews over at myoscience.com. You can take 2 to 3 capsules before your last meal, and it can elongate your fast. There's so much good research and so much good clinical and customer feedback on this formulation. Check it out over at myoscience.com. Okay. So Cody says, yeah, you like the live chats. So does Marco. Cool. What about others? Let me know. So Cody says, what do you think about heavy metal detoxes? So I think, I've done IV pushes of EDTA as well as DMPS and DMSA. I think detoxification is good, but I also think just sweating is good. Going to the gym, going to hot yoga, going in the sauna, exercise, having regular bowel movements is great. So when we think about elimination of heavy metals or persistent organic pollutants or phthalates or endocrine disrupting chemicals of any kind, we want to focus on minimizing our current exposure and increasing excretion. So, it's good to do detoxification strategies, chlorella, for example, spirulina, coffee enemas. These are all things that really come to mind, but also we want to minimize our future exposure. So where is this coming from? Is it coming from mercury amalgam fillings? Is it coming from unfiltered water? It turns out that different parts of the country concentrate various amounts of heavy metals. You've heard of Flint, Michigan, and the lead in the water and the like. So you want to be filtering your water. You want to be consuming plant material, if you consume plants that haven't been sprayed with insecticides, fungicides, and compounds. There's a very interesting phenomenon that's perfectly legal in agriculture, where heavy metals are disposed of in the form of fertilizer. So aluminum smelter plants, for example, disposing of toxic waste is very expensive. So it's actually perfectly legal to dispose of toxic waste in the form of fertilizer that is sprayed on crops. And that's why many people don't consume a lot of plant material, because it turns out that commercial crops grown by major agricultural companies are loaded with heavy metals and things like that. There's a book called Fateful Harvest that you should check out. And this really goes into these details about how heavy metals, lead, cadmium, arsenic, chromium, all these things, they are repurposed in fertilizer and sprayed on crops. This actually happened near my home state here in Washington, in Quincy, Washington. Again, read the book Fateful Harvest, really interesting stuff. Okay, great question coming in about EDTA. So EDTA is a way to help bind up lead in the blood and in the gut, depending upon how it's administered, to help with detoxification of heavy metals. So that's something to consider. I think an EDTA push intravenously is probably the best way to go about it. But that's one way to consider it. Heavy metal elimination. But then you also, if you do IV EDTA or DMSA or DMPS, a lot of people do recommend taking oral cholestyramine, which is a bile acid sequestrant, so that when you're releasing the heavy metals, say from your bone marrow, that it doesn't get recirculated in the gut via a process known as enterohepatic recirculation, which is really crazy. Okay, a question comes in about BioOptimizer's magnesium. I think it's fine. These kitchen sink formulas kind of are a little red flag for me. But yeah, it's kind of a kitchen sink. It's got every form of magnesium known to man. I think it's fine. I've met those people. I think they're nice people. Yeah, can't say anything wrong about that. Okay. What about parasites? Natural ways to eliminate parasites. This is from Tika or Tisha. Yeah, this is not my wheelhouse. I think if you have something like Blastocystis hominis, you can take some Flagyl, some metronidazole, things like that. I would work with someone who knows what they're doing. I don't know much about parasite elimination. There's the great book that we've talked about called Epidemic of Absence by Moses Velasquez Manoff, and we've interviewed him on the podcast maybe 8 years ago. He talks a lot about parasites, beneficial parasites, helminth therapy, and pathogenic parasites. In short, our immune systems have evolved to coexist with parasites of all kind. And now, because our world is so cleanly, that we may not be exposed to the beneficial symbiotic parasites, and that can be problematic. Okay. So check out that book. We've already talked about 2 books. We talked about Fateful Harvest, that is all about how heavy metals and chemicals are put into fertilizer and sprayed on crops, and that this is somehow legal. This is legal. This is nuts. The second book we talked about is called Epidemic of Absence. These are 2 amazing books. If you'd like to improve your health, you should definitely download these books on Audible or go buy them. Okay. Marco, nutrient. This is why we need regenerative agriculture. So Space Cat is talking about this. Yes. Nutrient food crops need to be rotated. Yes. How effective is activated charcoal? So that's going to be effective if you go to have sushi. So if you're going out to have sushi that might have heavy metals, then you could take activated charcoal. Okay. Yes, the book is called Fateful Harvest, Deb. Fateful. Epidemic of Absence by Moses Velasquez Manoff is all about parasites. Fateful Harvest is about heavy metals. Wormwood. Hello from New Mexico. How are we all doing tonight? Matthew says, maybe some of these high protein eaters are eating lots of pizza and burgers with buns and beer on the side. That's a lot of protein, but overall the diet isn't great. Exactly. Diet quality sucks for most people. Humboldt County, California. Okay, I've lived in Sonoma County. I've heard all about Humboldt County, if you know what I mean. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Deb. Guys and gals, if you enjoyed the content, hit that like button. Please, that just tells the algorithm that other people might like this video. I'm grateful that you are all here tuning in live. Have an awesome evening. I'm going to go to the gym and work out. Hopefully you all do too. Appreciate your likes, your comments, your shares. We will catch you next week, and appreciate you all tuning in. Hopefully you got some value from this conversation. Thank you for sharing this with a friend. If you did, definitely download those books, Fateful Harvest, Epidemic of Absence. Appreciate your live comments, guys and gals, and we'll catch you all later. Have an awesome day. Bye now.